We're starting out with a hip-driven technique, and you can see here where I push out the front with the hands. The stroke rate is about 67 to 70, 71, somewhere in that vicinity. It's a slower stroke rate, and it really depends on having strong legs in order to drive you. You can see I'm pushing hard with the legs as I push out the front, getting a lot of lift, getting a bigger hip turn, so you generate a little more power on each pull. The problem with hip-driven is that you don't get as many pulls, and because you're taking less pulls, you really have to depend on a stronger kick in order to propel you. This stroke really doesn't work well for a sprint, like a 50, but it's a nice way to swim a longer event, particularly if you have good, strong legs. Here from the front, you can see I push out the front with my hand, glide, get a lot of lift. From underwater, you can see I'm holding in front, a lot of lift, pushing down and then back. Again, you can see the strength of the legs as I drive forward with the hand. Turning back for the breath, coming down, pushing out the front, trying to get a high elbow underwater. Again, hip-driven technique. Pushing out the front, slower stroke rate, driving with the legs. In slow motion, you can see how long I hold the hands in the frontward pointing direction and then put downward pressure. You can also see at the end of the pull how I get a strong kick with the left. At the end of the right, I get a strong kick with the right. So that kick enables you to get more turn or more power at the end of that stroke. And this is a shoulder-driven technique. The stroke rate here is between 80 and 90. And notice that it's a faster stroke rate, keeping the hands in the front quadrant, quick catch and quick release. You don't push out the front, but you get the hand right into the mechanism of pulling right away. Still breathing every cycle. Still trying to use a stronger kick, but this technique is not quite as dependent on having a strong kick as the hip-driven technique. In this type of stroke, and here I'm trying to come over the top with the arms, attacking the water from above, this type of stroke is universal in the 50. In the sprints, you see everyone using this high stroke rate, over-the-top technique. And here from the front, you can see the hands catching the water early, trying to keep the elbows high. Avoid letting your hands go under your body. Keep the hands wide. Here from the side, you can see the fast stroke rate. Head down, body in alignment, high elbows. See, the angle of the hand takes an immediate change. It doesn't hold in front, but it starts to pull back almost instantly once it hits the water. You come over the top, trying to come at the water with an angle that enables you to initiate an immediate catch. Here you can see my head down, coming fast stroke rate, in this case almost into the mid-90s. Here you see from above and below as I use this shoulder-driven technique. And in slow motion, from behind, with the shoulder driven, you see how the hand catches earlier, starts to turn almost instantly when it hits the water, and begins the pullback. Still get a strong kick, still get that big kick at the end of the pull, trying to help the counter force. Still want to get a lot of distance, but not as much power as you would get with the hip-driven technique. And you don't see this very often, but a lot of swimmers who use the shoulder-driven technique can also use it with a two-beat kick. Here you're just using one kick that happens to be the opposite foot entering with the opposite hand. And the only way that that two-beat kick is effective is to have a very high stroke rate, 90 to 100. And what has emerged with people like Michael Phelps, Ryan Lochte, Tom Biederman, Jason Lezak, and many others, is this kind of hybrid stroke where they take a quick catch on one side using a shoulder-driven technique, which I'm using on the right side, and then on the breath side, I push out the front and hold longer with the left hand. So I'm effectively using both techniques. I use a shoulder-driven on the right, and I use a hip-driven technique on the left. And because both have their advantages, it seems to be most suitable for middle distance, for 200s, 400s, and that type of range. Although you can use this type of stroke, a hybrid stroke, on longer distance in open water. It also depends on having strong legs. And you can see as I push out the front with the left hand, driving with the legs, and it enables me more time on that side to get a bigger hip turn. But on the other side, where I dig in quickly with the right hand, I don't get quite as much power, but the net effect is I get a stroke rate that's probably closer to 80, 75 to 85, which is kind of in the middle between a shoulder-driven, which is closer to 90 to 100, and a hip-driven that's in the 60 to 70 range. And here you can see the hybrid freestyle from beneath, where I get a quick catch on the right side and a longer hold on the left. Bigger turn to the left side, not as big to the right. Here's the hip-driven technique, where I hold in front longer with each hand, and I get a big, huge hip turn on each side, getting maximum propulsion on each arm, but a slower stroke rate. And finally, this is the shoulder-driven, where I grab the water quickly with a higher stroke rate, but don't get as much hip rotation on either side.